Hello, I would like to welcome everybody to this event. My name is Aline Fonseca, and I am the head of Agile in BIP Brasil. In BIP, there is a center of excellence with many Agile specialists with a diverse background, knowledge, and skills. Our Agile experts are conducting a fantastic work in all of our clients, and today we will show a case about Agile and digital transformation of BIP Colômbia. Juan, our guest, is a partner in BIP Colômbia and have a big experience in this subject. With him, Alex Carvalho will lead the event. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you, Aline. Alex, you want to do an introduction? You're in mute.
No, you can start. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here with you to show a little bit of what we have been doing with a bank in Ecuador. It's an interesting case of doing an agile transformation, which you will see we have gone through several stages, and but we are very proud of what we have achieved. And even though we still have some steps to achieve to meet. So please, let's move to the next page. Well, a little bit of context. This is a very traditional bank, mid-sized bank, very strong in the southeast part of Ecuador, in the Azuay region, and with some presence in the rest of the country. They called us some years ago to help them define their IT plan and also to look for into the IT management model. And what we found is a very common situation in many of our clients, a high insatisfaction of the user areas with IT, basically due to three things: a large and growing requirements backlog. There was the users were saying we send some requirements, they go into a backlog, and we never know when they're going to come out. And when they come out, they normally don't produce or they don't deliver what we were expecting. It's not too clear if it was not because it was badly interpreted or because so much time had gone by that the needs were different from what they originally thought. So that's the first thing we saw. And in the next page, we'll see the way it worked. So what we had is a very traditional approach to managing IT.
Então, tivemos uma abordagem muito tradicional.
So we had a very traditional approach. It all started, the process started with the business discussing the needs with the project management office and the process area. We structured the project and defined the requirements. And so once they had this done, they sent the project to IT. There was no consideration, no discussion about the available capacity in IT. It just got into the IT area with a high priority. IT planned the project and started working on it, assigning resources, let's say, depending on their availability. So sometimes when there was another important issue or there was another project that was delayed, they would take out the resources without notifying the user area, work on the project that had the problems, and then return them to the project. Obviously, this was very disappointing for the business since they never knew when if the project was being worked on and when was it going to be finally delivered. But as we started to understand the situation, we found that there was the reasons for this situation were more broad than what we thought. Please, next page, Camila. So what we saw, and that was part of what was I was mentioning, IT was involved in the project very late. They were not considering the understanding the need, structuring the way to solve it. Just after the PMO and process area had defined and structured the project, they were involved. And once the project started, the business had a very low involvement in the execution. The project didn't have any sponsor from the business, and the resources that the business areas assigned to the project had a very low dedication and very low empowerment. They were not able to make any decisions on the outcome of the project or the definitions that needed to be taken. In addition, there was no chargeback of the project from IT to the business area. This means that the business was not really very concerned about using or not using the project that was delivered. It would not cost to them anymore, since this was all done with the budget of IT, both in the development of the project as well as in the operation. And as I mentioned before, the project plans did not consider the real capacity available for execution. And finally, there were some business cases prepared when the project was structured, but the actual benefits were never measured. So there was low appropriation of the solutions, and much of the things we found is many of the solutions that were delivered were never used or used by very few users. Or when they were finally delivered, they would say the user who asked for this is no longer in the bank, so we don't know if we really need this anymore. So with this context, let's move to the next page and see what we proposed the bank to do. So we thought there were several options. We thought we could propose a traditional IT structure, but we thought that to make it work in the current situation was as hard as making an agile implementation work, and that the agile model will be of much more benefit for the bank. So we structured several squads, some aligned with the business units like loans, checking and savings, credit cards, collections, and others that were transversal to them. For example, channels. Channels is a good example of the things we thought when we defined this model. We thought that the time to market, the autonomy of the squads was very important, but as important as the autonomy was the fact that we needed to have a model that would provide sustainability to the IT platform. And we thought it was important for each of the squads to be responsible for a subset of the components of the IT platform, and not all the squads modifying and making fixes to all the components. So that's why, for example, we defined the channel squad. We thought, let's say, loans and checking and savings, all of them will want to publish their products in the portal, but not everybody should be touching and modifying the portal, because we would get to the point that we see very often where in our clients that say so many people have been modifying the system that nobody now is able to understand how it works, and nobody is able to do anything about it. So we decided to do this, for example, these channels squad. So there will be a specialized group doing the work on channels and having to interact with the other squads that were requesting their needs. So, for example, if loans needed to do something, wanted to publish a new loan product, it needed to talk with the channels to publish it in the portal, also in the mobile app. And in the same way, we defined other squads that were more in the concept of a center of excellence. For example, process automation. This team would understand or have the tools that were required for doing the automation, and would work with the different squads or business units to provide them the automation of their specific processes. Similar will be the integration squad. The squad would have all the definition of the integration architecture, and work with the different squads in providing them the services they required for automating or in these integrations between the different systems. Obviously, this is something that had a little bit of controversy, because the squad said, I'm not on my own. I don't have the full control to be able to publish and do my work when I need it. So, but that's something that we discussed deeply and found that this balance between autonomy and the sustainability of the IT platform was very important. And for these discussions where we needed to do, where they needed to have this conversation of the dependencies between the different squads, we proposed the synchronization committee. So this committee would meet once a week with representatives from all the squads, and they would discuss the requirements of one squad to the other. And they would discuss when the other squad could put that into the backlog and implement that requirement. This, as I will mention later, is one of the big challenges because the squads are very reluctant to put in the requirements of the other squads. But that's the way we measured it. So the synchronization committee is there to discuss these dependencies between the squads, and the model maturity and sponsors committee meets every 2 weeks to discuss how is the process working, where do they need more training, what kind of roles they have problems with, and see that the model is evolving constantly and improving the way it works. And also to guarantee that the squads would not become very independent in the way they worked, we defined some communities of practice. We started with the definition of 3 communities: architecture, Q&A, and software development and agility. So that these communities of practice would gather the people that were executing the same roles in the squads, give them training, share best practices between the squads, and guarantee that these squads would work in the same way and learn from the other ones, and be able in that way also for us to promote people moving from one squad to the other, because they would learn and understand how it was working. So, okay, now when we go to the confirmation of the squads, we have something that is very important to understand. Is a normal squad has a product owner, a scrum master, and a team. When we see the squad we proposed, we defined several other roles, and there's a reason for that. We found that, for example, for the product owner in the bank, we wouldn't have somebody with enough business vision to be able to lead the squad and also have enough time to be there as it was required. So we defined that the sponsor would be somebody of a VP level with a dedication, a very low dedication, but it would give the vision to the squad of what was needed from a vision from the business point of view. And he would be supported by 2 persons: a product owner, who would be somebody in the manager level, who would have more time, something around 20% of its time, to be working with the squad, and who would be communicating with the sponsor and guaranteeing that the business needs will be transmitted correctly to the squad, and a functional leader who will be an analyst from the same business area, who will be working full-time with the squad, writing the user stories, and then participating in all the development cycle and the testing of those requirements. In the same manner, we defined a technical leader. We had in the bank the situation where most of the developers were not employees of the bank. They were hired from different software development companies, so there was a high rotation rate. So we needed somebody who would understand and know the platform of all the components that were managed by that squad, and in that way would be able to manage let's say a changing group of developers and QA analysts. So we had that technical leader leading the developers and the QA analysts, and obviously this squad will be had that structure, will be supported by some other roles that will be shared between the different squads, like UX, information security, infrastructure, operations, risks, and architecture. And the squad responsibility would be end-to-end. There was, let's say, the traditional way of working. The project will be finished, it will be handed over to operations, and all the issues and errors that would appear during the operation of the system will be handled by the operations team. The project would forget about it. The team will be dissolved, and all the maintenance will be responsibility of operations. So we changed that, and we said all the responsibility of the whole cycle of the solutions will be in charge of the squad. They will identify the needs, estimate the effort, prioritize the requirements, do the planning, execute the project, deliver to operations, but also be responsible to solve level 2 incidents. So this is the way we handled it. That was also an important discussion about the squad being required to do the fixing of the bugs. But that's something we thought was very important to assure the good quality of the software. And so this is the way it looked into the IT organization. We had the architecture area, which is something that we also proposed to strengthen. And we would have the people in the squads who will be led by coaches. We used the name coach because we didn't want to mix being who they will be reporting to, and they will be obviously reporting to the squads, but who will be leading and being sure that they had the knowledge, that they had the skills, that they knew the methodologies, that they had the tools to be able to do their work correctly. So we had two coaches, a coach for development and QA, and an agile coach, most let's say, dedicated to work with the Scrum Masters and be sure that the agile methodology was worked properly, that the ceremonies were done, that they were using the correct tools to do a follow-up on the teams. This is the way we structure it and the way it was rolled out. So for the rolling out, what did we do is we proposed starting with a pilot and do a progressive rollout of the model. First, starting with a training of the whole bank in agile concepts. We see that the agile concepts are easy to understand, but the trade-offs that they imply are not so easy to accept. So we proposed the bank to do a training for all the bank, and then start with one team. And for that team, we would need to have also the agile coach from the beginning, and also the QA and development coach to select them, train them, and then start selecting the first pilot with a squad that will be a relevant situation in the bank, somebody from a business area that would have an interesting problem to solve, but it would also have a good team structure. Ideally, a team that had already been working together for some time and that will be willing to overcome the obstacles of the model. Because we were sure that there were going to be a lot of situations they needed to address. And unless we had this kind of leadership, the model would certainly suffer in the beginning. So we propose that and do a pilot during the 3 months, share the findings, adjust the model, and then start with the rollout to the other squads. And for that rollout, we were proposing to do a training to all the people involved in the different squads, even though some of the squads would obviously start working together first. But we wanted to share or start building that sense of community of practice. So that all the people that will be, let's say, developers will be trained together and they will start forming the community, and even though they will be starting working in the squad sometime later. And then every 2 months deploy a new squad. That was what we did in the first project, the project when we did the IT plan and designed the management model. And at this point, the bank took our recommendations and decided to work on its own for some time. So if you move to the next page, Camila, please. So this is the first phase we see between October 2018 to January 2019. They worked on their own for almost a year and a half, and they called us back in the middle of 2020 to do a review of what they were doing and how was it working. Obviously, they knew it was not working too well, because otherwise they probably would have not called us and continue working their own. So we came back then, and we have been working on several phases with them. But if we move to the next page, we will see what we found in June of 2020 when we came back a year and a half later. So what did we find? Basically, that they had distorted the whole concept of the model. Basically, they had changed the names of the people. Now they were not project managers, but scrum masters and things like that. But they kept working in the same way. They had formed two squads, basically 30 people in each team, and they were focused only on innovation projects. So they for example, they had one squad basically working on credit cards, and when they were thinking about a new product, they would send the people to the squad and work there for some time. But when they needed to do another project of a traditional project, they would take the people out of the squad, send it to work in the projects, and then return to the squad when the project was finished. One of the things they needed to do was define how they would adapt their methodology to the agile model, and they had not done that. So they were working with the same way, kind of methodology they had been working in the past. So basically, the only thing they had done is they said, we figure out we have a squad for doing innovation projects. People come in and out. They come to the squad when they're not doing any other project, but and work for some time and then leave. Obviously, this was not the idea of the concept. We had mentioned that the whole idea of a squad was to address all the needs of the business unit, both for new projects, also for the maintenance of their legacy systems. And so we revisited the whole model. We can move to the next page. Revisited the model, saw if the squads we had defined a year and a half before were still valid, made some adjustments, and discussed and went into deeper detail and helped them define, for example, the methodology and other definitions that we can see in the next page. So we revisited the definition of the squads. We changed some of the squads. For example, we saw the channels and credit cards had a lot of work, and we needed to divide those squads into two squads for each of the business units. And insisted on the fact that they needed to do the whole life cycle of each of the components, not only work in the new ideas. We defined an agile methodology, discussed this with the project management office, and defined what would be the processes that would be adapted to the methodology and how they would work in the agile model. What would be the artifacts and also the tools for doing the follow-up on how the sprints were evolving. We defined to use Azure DevOps. That was because they already had some agreement with Microsoft. So we decided to use that tool. We discussed this with a broader set of stakeholders. We discussed it with the IT teams, with the project management office, with the business areas who will be in charge now to understand what will be their role as sponsor, as product owner, as technical leader, and how they would need to interact with the people in the technical team, the developers, technical leaders, and QA analysts. We reviewed the backlog of all the requirements that were outstanding and assigned them to the different squads. And we defined and started the implementation of the squads one by one, how we had offered. Now we were working with them in that definition. Another important topic that we did was define what will be the role of the PMO in the new model. As I had mentioned, they were the ones who structured the projects with the business areas and then handed it over to IT, and they would do the follow-up on the work plans and the budget. Now we say in this agile model, it doesn't make any sense to be following up on the budget and a work plan. We need to measure the real value that the squads are producing with the work they're doing. So that's what you need to do. You need to help the squads structure how they are going to produce the value, and then help them measure if what they really achieved in terms of business value. They would also be responsible for communicating or promoting an agile culture in the bank, and leading the synchronization committee, since this will be the point where the different squads would bring their requirements and try to negotiate with the other squads how they will be incorporated into their backlog. And at the end, we had to do a trade-off. They said they needed also to measure let's say the performance of the squads in terms of the number of features they were delivering. We thought that really didn't have much value, but we gave them the point so we could continue working on things that we thought that were of more value for the model. So so how did we work on these to deploy the squads? We onboarded the sponsors. They were, let's say, easily identifiable because they were aligned to the business units. And then with the sponsors, selected the product owner for each of the squads. We planned the onboarding of the different resources, understood who had been working on those topics with them in the past, and see how we could free them from the current projects and assign them to the squads. We participated in the selection of the Scrum Masters. There was the way they used to work was so different that none of the people that they had in the bank could be, let's say, upskilled to be a Scrum Master. So we needed to hire the Scrum Masters. We worked with them on that selection. This was challenging since the city where the bank is, its headquarters are, is a small city, and there's not a lot of technical people and less people with an agile background. But we did the work, and we started to have people that could be incorporated into the teams. We trained the teams in the agile concepts, the ceremonies, the tools, and also helped them get started doing the first sprints. We had to analyze the projects that were in execution. What we in general found is that they had a large number of simultaneous projects. We think that the people have like a peace of mind when they think that the projects are already in execution, even though they are not finished, they're not producing any benefit to the bank, but they feel that if they are in progress, that's good enough. We already started working on them. So that was something that we had also important discussions, and say that the benefit for the bank was really achieved when the system was put into production, not while it was being developed. So if we concentrated the resources on a small group of projects, we could finish those projects, put them into production, start capturing the benefits that they were supposed to generate, and then continue with the other projects. So we worked with that. We chose what projects to concentrate the resources first to finish. We defined on the projects which one to finish with a traditional approach and which one we should, let's say, transform into an agile model, defining to epics features and generate a backlog for them. And we coached them in the first sprint for them to understand how to handle the ceremonies, what's the role of each of the persons, what was the difference between a technical leader and a product owner, how should they communicate between each other. And that was the way we helped them deploy and get going on the squads. After we had the first 3 squads working, we deployed the communities of practice. We already had the coaches who will be leading the communities, but we needed to gather the people that were working on the same roles. So we gathered the people not only in the squads that were doing, for example, the role of a QA analyst, but also the people in the tradition that were still working in the traditional mode in QA, and put them together, identified some topics that would be of interest for them to enhance their capabilities and the knowledge of how to do their work, defined a plan for the first meetings, what will be the topics that will be addressed, who will be in charge of preparing those topics, led and participated in those first meetings of the communities, and in the selection of a tool where they would be recording and registering all the information that would be generating in those sessions. So that's the way we worked with them. We worked with them for 6 months. In our original plan, we could have deployed all the squads that we had planned for, but the process of recruiting and onboarding the Scrum Masters took longer than we planned. So by the 6 months, when the 6 months had finished, we had implemented 6 or 7 of the squads. After that, we continued working with them or doing a follow-up once a month. We go, we see what they have done. We generate a report. We define an action plan for the next month, and come back and see how they had progress. So when we try to recap on what were the main challenges we addressed through the implementation, we can classify them in 3 topics. The first one was the acceptance of the responsibilities in the new model. As I mentioned before, it's easy when people say, okay, I'm going to have my own team. I'm going to be autonomous. I don't have to ask anybody else to help me with my work. That's fine. But when they figure out that also implies a big responsibility, they're going to be responsible for the outcomes for the people that work in the team, then we have start seeing some question marks in the faces of some people. The first thing we saw is that sponsors argued that they were doing the work that IT should have done before and they was not able to do. So they were receiving a big backlog of things that had asked for several years before in some cases. And they say, why do we have to do this? This should have been done by IT. I understand the model. I'm willing to work on this model, but on my new requirements, not on the things that should have been done several years ago. So that was the first thing we discussed. We had to define several strategies for that. We tried to work on the squads to solve that backlog. At the end, we had to implement a task force to take care of that backlog and leave the squads only with the new requirements. Another topic was the management of external vendors by the squads. We said, okay, we have some vendors that they have an agreement with the bank on a global scale, but each squad is responsible for managing the vendor in the work they do with the squad. In the beginning, this was very hard. They were always calling back at the software development managers who used to take that role and now was the coach for development and QA to help them solve the problems with the vendors. So this was distracting this coach from doing the work that she was supposed to do, which was enhancing the methodologies, giving the training to the people in development and QA, and providing automating tools for testing to move into a DevOps path. So this was something also that we needed we had to discuss a lot. And finally, we got to the point where there was a definition of an area that was taking care of the overall contract with the vendors, and each squad managing the piece it was working with the vendor. Inside the squad, we also had some, let's say, training and issues that we had to address. The first one was the estimation of the user stories. And there was a big difference in the first sprints in the amount of work they thought they could do and the amount of work they actually did. So we had to work on estimation methodologies. And also, as the teams started to have some experience, understood the platform they were working on, they had a better idea of what was the real effort they needed to address each of the different requirements. Another topic was the quality of the user stories. Even though they were working together, the quality of the story was not very good at the beginning. So once the story was finished, it came back to the functional analyst that was working with them in the team. It didn't meet the requirements of the business. So we had to do a big work of explaining and training the people on how to prepare good user stories that could really solve the business needs. Another thing was the reluctance, what I already mentioned, that of going in to solve those. Well, this is a little bit different. It's not only what they had, the requirements they had in the backlog, but also the technical debt and regulatory requirements. They were always asking, well, who should solve this? This is not a topic of the squad. So we had these discussions on there's nobody else. Everybody's assigned to a squad. All the development capability is distributed among the squads. So are the things you need to do, and that's part of your responsibility, being owner of the platform that supports your business unit. So you need to take care of the technical debt and also of all the regulatory requirements that may appear. Reduction in the work in progress. There was something that sometimes we appear that they also wanted to start doing several things in parallel that had let's say a big scope, and it would take several sprints. Again, convincing them it was more convenient to take one of those topics, do it, finish it, put it into production, and then start with the next one. We also had a low participation of business roles. This depended a lot in between different squads. In some squads, we had some business people that were very interested, involved in how the squad worked. Others were more reluctant. We had a case of one squad where there was one person that was having the role of being the sponsor, the product owner, and the technical leader. But he was obviously not dedicating the time he needed. So the squad was lost, was doing work with their own interpretation of the needs, and this was obviously not giving the results that we were expecting. And finally, we had one of the squads we were mentioning was in charge of 3 areas of the company: finance, administration, and risk, because there was enough work to build a squad for each one of them. So we had a challenge there in seeing how we would prioritize the needs from the business different areas. At the end, what we defined is that we would be providing, they would make an overall plan, and we would be assigning some specific sprints to work on topics of each of the areas. This was not an ideal solution, but this was something that was, let's say, a trade-off between having a specific squad for each of the areas, which would have incremented the cost in a significant way, or having to share the squad between the 3 areas. And there were also some issues or challenges between the squads and with other areas. The first one was the management of dependencies between the squads. As I mentioned before, there was a reluctance of the squads to incorporate into the backlog the needs that were coming from other squads. And we had to work that in the synchronization committee and try in the squads to anticipate those needs that they had, or the dependencies they had with other squads, to bring them to the table to the synchronization committee as soon as possible, so that the other squad would have enough time to put it into its backlog without affecting the work plan of the squad that was requesting the requirement. We also had to work on deploying independent development and test environments for each of the squads. In the beginning, the squads were working on development. When they got to the point of testing and doing integration testing, they had to wait for infrastructure to enable environments, and all the speed and agility they had achieved was lost at that point. So we had to define what were the needs of these environments in each of the squads, see if the infrastructure available was enough, complete that infrastructure, and assign specific environments for each of the teams. In this way, they will be more autonomous and they could complete the cycle. However, the agile mindset is something that we have been working on, but it's not something that's common in the rest of the bank. So when we needed something outside of the squads, the squads usually met with the traditional way. When they needed to hire somebody because the squad needed to grow, there was a long process for recruiting these people. When they needed to buy let's say an additional computer, some sort of resource they needed for a development, this would go through a long procurement process. So this is something that the bank's still working on. This is something that's not solved yet, and it's something that's affecting the speed of the squads. But the bank is aware of that, but is changing very slowly. So these were some of the main challenges we addressed during the implementation. I would like to tell you a little bit of what is the current status of the model. We can see that in the next page. So what we see is, even though there's a long way to go, yet the bank is committed to continue working in this way. We did a survey among the people working in the squads, not only including the sponsors and the technical people, product owners, of how they felt the model was working. We did this on 5 dimensions: the agile mindset within the squads, the way they were working with the methodology, how they were doing that, the performance in terms of how much user stories were being delivered, the value that it was delivering to the business, and the process and organization that was more related to the way they interacted with the rest of the team. As you see, this is based on 5 points is the maximum score. Most of them are around 4. The one that is the lowest one is the process and organization, which is what I was mentioning just a minute ago about the obstacles they found when they needed to go in and interact with procurement, with HR, with the traditional areas of the company. So there's a high level of satisfaction of the teams, including the sponsors and POs. Nobody, neither the people from the business nor the people from the IT, wants to go back to the way they used to work before. There's a better communication between IT, which is basically done between the model coordinator, who belongs to the IT area, and the coaches with the business areas, which are represented by the sponsors and POs. There's a good team building within the squads. It's something that we cannot give for granted, and even more considering the high attrition levels that they have in the bank. We see that around the average rate, 60% of the team is changing every year. In some squads, or changing more than once a year, the whole team. So that's a big challenge to build the team. But since there's the sponsors and the product owners are pretty stable, they're an important group in onboarding the new team members and trying to make that team continue working as such quickly. And the other important thing, and I think that's very relevant, is the dev and QA coach. We used to do follow up on specific requirements and answer to the business if that requirements was already had been deployed to production or not, into working in how to improve the development and QA process. So they started working on several topics. The most relevant are automating testing. They selected some tools and they are working with those tools, and they now have seen how they can repeat the testing, spend much less time from the team doing that testing, and being able to produce better quality software because they're doing better regression tests. They have been working on source code management and the version management of their source code. They have been working on definition standards. All of these very important for knowledge management, especially due to this high attrition rates. So this is something that we feel very positive. It was something that we had to work a lot because people want to go back to the things they're comfortable doing. So making this person be really working on what we're supposed to do as a coach is something that we see very important. And a key success factor has been that the advisor to the CEO is heavily involved in the model, not only in the design, but in the follow-up of how it's working. So we have a weekly committee, or they have a weekly committee that includes the CIO, these advisor to the CEO, and the coaches, the model manager from IT. They discuss how the process is working, and they repeat this meeting, or they have this meeting every other week with the sponsors. where the sponsors also share their view on how the model is working and see where they need to do some additional work. So finally, we have a page of what's next, what are the next steps they need to achieve, or we hope to be able to support them in this process of consolidating the model in the bank. So these are what we consider the remaining challenges. The first one is to embed a deep agile mindset in the squads and the rest of the bank. So we're mentioning it's easy to talk about the agile concepts, understanding, but to really work focused on the value, focused on being able to accept having mistakes and correct them quickly is something that still has to be worked, not only at the squad level, but at the general level of the bank. Implement OKRs to foster high conscience of the need to maximize the benefits. They are still in a very, let's say, immature state, measuring very basic things about the performance of the squads, but they need to go deeper into the measuring of the real value that is generating to the business. As I mentioned in the previous slide, even the sponsors say that the value to the business is good, but that we don't have an objective measure of that value. So that's something we want to insist on, that they need to do very quickly. Assign the costs of the squad to the business units. Up to now, the budget continues to be the IT people is paid by the budget of IT, and the business people by the business area. We have proposed that the whole cost of the squad should be charged to the business unit. So the business unit is also seeing what is the cost and what is the benefit it's obtaining, and that would also improve the prioritization of their needs and concentrate on the things that really have value for the business. Another topic they need to work on is the attrition in the squads and a very slow reaction from HR department. We have had several conversations with the bank about the fact that the people not only move to another place for a better salary, there's a lot of things in the employee value proposition they need to understand and improve if they want to have a stable team that can really work as a high performance team and produce the result they're expecting. The negotiation of dependencies between the squads continues to be a challenge, even though we have the synchronization committee. Sometimes they don't get into an agreement in that committee, and everybody goes back to work in its normal activities, let's say, forgetting that there's a need from some other business unit that needs a development from that squad. And finally, knowledge management. We think that there has been some interesting progress in the way they're working on documenting source code, the tools they're using, the communities of practice that will help a lot in making everybody share the knowledge they have. But that's something that is not finished and that needs to continue to evolve in order to guarantee that when people leave the company, that they will continue to do so. They don't lose important knowledge in that process. This is what I wanted to share with you about our experience implementing this agile transformation in the bank. So now, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Excellent, Juan. Very amazing presentation. Thank you very much. Here are some questions asked by subscribers in this event. Okay, let's check. The first question is, what was the biggest difficulty you faced on with this case, considering you made this transformation in a hierarchical company? People availability, people commitment. What point was the most challenging?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, there were several challenges. One of the challenges was to be able to say, okay, let's analyze what the people are working on. Let's define what we need to stop. We may need to stop some projects, concentrate on finishing some of the other projects, and then restarting these projects within the squads, in the agile model. So people say, we are already progressing on this project. We cannot stop them. We're already close to finish. They say, you're not close to finish. You just started, but you need to, we need to make those hard definitions.
Yeah, excellent. The second question is, did you use some framework in this transformation process?
Well, I would say yes. In general, we would use let's say, basic concept from the Agile Manifesto, I would say.
Yeah.
And when we were adapting those concepts to a specific situation of the bank and trying to see what worked, what didn't work. We also used let's say, concepts from Scrum. But those were the basic topics that we were looking into. But what we had done in other clients, and we had seen in the cases we had studied from other companies, is you need to tailor those frameworks to your needs. And in a certain way, that's an interesting question, because when we have people that are joining the bank after the model has been implemented, they say, why do we have these frontiers, for example, in the IT platforms? Why can't we touch all the components? In strictly agile model, anybody can do anything it needs to get its product done. So we have to explain why we think also not only agility, but also sustainability is an important feature in the model. That's one for example, of the things we had specifically customized for the bank.
Thank you. I believe you have time for two more. Let's check. In your point of view, after this successful case, do you see an continuous improvement into agile methodology, more committed from people maybe? What I mean is, from now on, you can see that's world transformation now. Are they comfortable to flow in this way and keep doing improvement and work in agile methodology?
Well, I think that yes, definitely what we see in the bank is convinced from, let's say, that's more of a gut feeling that this is a much better way to work than what they had before. Now IT and the business are much more integrated. The business understands the implications for IT of what they're asking for, and also the teams, as they start to work together with the same business units for a long time, they understand the business they're working for, so they understand the needs. Now, need for improvement, definitely, I would say that the main topic is the measuring the value that is being generated. I know it's important to measure the speed, the velocity of the squad, the number of user stories. All those things are important, but the most important thing to measure is, are we doing not only the things correct, but doing the correct things? Are we doing the things that really give value to the business? And also, in another sense, is also from the, let's say, from the CEO to ask more of those kind of questions to the squads. Okay, very good. You're working this way, but what is the final outcome for the bank?
Yeah, no doubt this was a very awesome project. Very good. I check you have no I sponsor into the squads, right? As a squad member. Do you had any problem with him about kind of command and control management?
Excuse me, trouble with them in what?
Is if from the side of this sponsor inside the squad, if you have some problem like him start to use a command and control management.
Yes, definitely. So and that's something, and in being a hierarchical bank, so comes in the sponsor and say, we need to have this for Tuesday, but we already have a sprint going on. And so they had, and that's that's an important issue. They need to go to the IT, the manager of the model in IT, and say, we already have a plan. They're asking for this thing that it cannot be done in 2 days, but we don't have a way to tell them that. So we have to go back, and this IT manager goes and talks to the sponsor and says, we need to let's say, respect the rules of working in an agile team. The team has to do the estimation of the effort, and we understand there are some urgent needs. We may need to, let's say, rebalance the sprint and take out some of the things we're doing and put this. But you need to, the team, if you want them to be responsible and accountable for the work, you need them to be able to participate also in the definition.
Very good. And the last one, I understood your flow of value in your presentation finishes in deliver to operations, right? You have some steps and finishes in deliver to operations.
Yes.
Do you have problems with software returning for the operations to the team? Problems like the people from operation pushing problems for the development team, or the otherwise, you have some kind of these problems?
Yes, there's that interface between the squad and operations continue to have some improvement opportunities. The process is still has a lot of paperwork, a lot of things that they're asking for, and not very agile. So that's some of the reasons why they also need to continue working in DevOps to automate that process all the way to deployment into production. But one of the things that I think that we did correctly is make the squads responsible for the production for the problems that the software has in production. So because many of the pushback before was you're giving us something that's not completely tested, and now we're responsible for maintaining that piece of software inside the people in operations. Now the people in the squads understand that they need to fix those bugs and be responsible. And at the end, the sponsor would not only be having, let's say, a problem on doing rework, but on its clients having problems using the software they develop for those clients. So in that way, that's a kind of a pressure for the squad to produce better quality software and have less, let's say, less friction with operations.
Okay, this is the kind of things normal in this kind of operation when you have different group of people, no, from development and from operations. Very, very good. More two questions right now. How did the people who participated in the transformation react to this cultural change?
It's let's say it's an issue that it's evolving, continuously evolving. But the people that are in this, it was at the beginning, it was hard for them to understand they were really a team. They were used to work in different, let's say, sections, different what we called black boxes. So I was in IT with all the people from IT. The users were there. We only met once in a while. Now that we have to work together every day, at the beginning, it didn't flow very, very well. It was still like the sponsor and the product owner and the functional leader were working on one side and the IT team on the other, and they were using the Scrum Master as a communication bridge. But as time passed and they were working together longer, and there were always the same faces in the table, they started to be able to really understand the benefits of working, of talking more than sending documents and emails from one side to the other. So let's say the agile mindset started to improve.
Perfect. And in one of the slides of your presentation, you talk about accepting responsibilities in this new model, so as a part of the process. Based on that, how was the support from the change management people or change management group? Or you had no support?
We had no support. That's one of the things we have been discussing for a long time. We said we need a stronger change management program here. They said they were looking for some outside help. Then at the end, they said they would do it with their own HR resources. But finally, at the end, very little has been done. So it's more the work we do with those coaches and the work the coaches do with the teams, the way that we have been doing the change management, but not something that is, let's say, a structured change management process. That's some of the things that we think we didn't give enough importance to in the beginning.
Very good. Well, we have no more questions. Juan, thank you from the bottom of my heart and everyone here today for all your contributions and being with us today. I love this event. Very, very good. Guys, it was awesome have you with us. I really hope you enjoyed this event, and the discussions and the placements with Juan were amazing. It was really amazing, Juan. Thank you again. And hope to see you soon in the next BIP event to talk about agility, business agility, or everything like in the agility world. Great night, everyone.
Thank you, Alex, for the invitation. I hope that some of the messages are useful for other projects and that we can share these experiences and make each agile transformation each time more successful.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, everybody. Good night, and let's rest a little.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Juan.
Bye.
Bye, guys.